Today we're going to continue with equations of a circle. And what we saw yesterday was that the standard form of an equation of a circle is a really easy form to use. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a different form, sometimes this is called general form, and transform it into standard form of a circle and then identify the center and radius. Remember, standard form, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where the h and k are the center and the r is the radius. This equation is obviously not in that form. But this equation can be transformed into standard form fairly easily. And that's because if we look at what we have on this left-hand side, x squared minus 8x plus 16 is a perfect square trinomial. And y squared plus 4y plus 4 is also a perfect square trinomial. So if we recognize that, we can factor these right away. Quick reminder from earlier in the year. When you have x plus a and you square it, you get x squared plus 2ax plus a squared. When you have x minus a and you square it, you get x squared minus 2ax plus a squared. So if we look at these first three terms, I have x squared minus 8x. That minus 8 is the minus 2a, which means my a value would be 4. If you have 4 squared, this should be plus 16. So this is part of the reason that completing the square works. When you complete the square, you try to make this constant the number that you get when you divide the coefficient of x by 2 and square it. So here, since it already is a perfect square trinomial, I can write this in the factored form. The other way to see that this is x minus 4 squared is to think what two numbers multiply to 16 and add up to negative 8, negative 4 and negative 4. So if it's x minus 4 times x minus 4, that's x minus 4 squared. I have this plus, and then I'm going to look at these three terms. And again, in this example, this is a perfect square trinomial. Look at the coefficient of y. It's 4. So that's my 2a. 2a is 4, so a has to be 2. If a is 2, then a squared is the 4 that's added as the constant here. So this is another perfect square trinomial where it's y plus 2 quantity squared. So in this problem, we don't have to complete the square. We just need to factor each of those trinomials to get standard form. We want to put it in standard form and then identify the center and radius. Here's my standard form. The center is at positive 4, negative 2. And the radius, remember that this side of the equation is r squared. R squared is 25, so my radius is 5. In my next example, I don't have any perfect square trinomials to start. I have x squared plus 6x and y squared minus 4y minus 3. Again, if you take 4 and divide it by 2 and square it, you don't get 3. So what we're going to do for these problems is we're going to start by organizing our terms. I'm going to get all the x terms together, which they are. And then I'm going to get the y terms together. And then I want to get this minus 3 and move it over to the other side. So I get this equation. Now we're going to complete the square. When you complete the square, you look at the coefficient of the variable, 6 for 6x. You take that number, divide it by 2, and square it. 6 over 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. I'm going to do the same thing for the coefficient of y. It's negative 4. Take the negative 4, divide it by 2, and square it. Negative 4 over 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. So in order to make this x squared plus 6x a perfect square trinomial, I have to add 9. In order to make the y squared minus 4y a perfect square trinomial, I have to add 4. And then I have this 3 on the other side of the equation, but remember when you're solving equations or working with equations, if you add to one side of the equation, you need to balance it out. So you have to make sure to add the 9 and add the 4 to this side as well. This is probably the easiest place to make a mistake on these problems, is to forget to add to both sides. Now that I've completed the square in x and completed the square in y, I'm going to factor x squared plus 6x plus 9 is x plus 3, quantity squared. It's this number that you get when you take the b over 2 that goes in the factored form, plus factor y squared minus 4y plus 4, which is y minus 2 squared, equals, and then add up 3 plus 9 plus 4, which is 16. Now I have my standard form, and then I'm going to write my center, and my radius, which is square root of 16, is 4. So it's really important that you understand this process of completing the square. Coefficient of the variable, divide by 2 and square it, add to both sides. Factor your perfect square trinomial, and that'll give you standard form.